Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the latest transmission here in the Legend of Turtle Island, a 13 moon almanac to life as a New Earth pioneer. And in our ongoing series, exploring all things 13, I'm once again joined by the wonderful Leslie Shankman, teacher and guide in the Stellar Nations Pathway. Hi, Leslie, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I think there's so much going on. I'm curious of how we're going to wend our way through.
Yeah.
I mean, I have ideas. I have a path, but I don't know. It feels like something might come in with it.
Right. Well, as always, in the shows that me and Leslie do, in fact, pretty much everything that comes out of QPW is a kind of an interactive on the spot decoding. So, yes, there is some preparation with slides, but a lot of what comes out of certainly myself, Leslie, and often Bella too, is what comes through in the moment. And that's partly why I enjoy doing the shows so much, Leslie, because I learn something in every single show. And I'm often like, oh, wow, that seems to link to this and this. So, bear all of this in mind, everybody, as we go into this fourth transmission here with the self existing moon of form, which in the Mayan calendar and cosmology relates to the owl, which we've covered already in that particular journey we're doing on QPW. But this particular series, myself and Leslie decided to share with everybody so that everyone can feel into the 13. But here we're relating the 13 tones of the Navigation Guide to Quantum Consciousness, or the 13 of the 1320, Mayan a dream spell, or the 13 steps of the Ascension Ladder to the 13 stellar nations, which perhaps we'll have a look at this today, could also relate to our etheric DNA and what's inside of us that actually is now getting activated as the Sun and Three Eye Atlas have their tete-a-tete today. And there's all kinds of explosions going on around the Sun. So I'm sure that many authorities and organizations out there are going to have a field day with this. But if you've been paying attention and going inwards, chances are you've already had some direct communication with some of these things flying around in the sky. And if you haven't, well, Leslie's here to help make some sense of it on the internal planes with what it is that we might be able to communicate with or have been communicating with. So that's a hell of a lead in, Leslie. No pressure.
Yeah. All
Where
right.
would you
Well,
like to start?
let's put the slides up and go with them.
Right.
So,
So,
great.
first of all, Leslie, give a little bit of preview, if you may, into how we arrived at this particular stellar nations with this form as a sort of a leading, because the
Yeah,
last
well, that's
we were with
kind
the
of
angel.
where I'm going to
So,
go.
yeah.
Yeah, well, go ahead. I'm sorry. Please finish. You said something just about the angel.
No, I was just saying, just to bring the audience here more into the awareness, if they haven't seen the last show, we just looked at with the electric moon of service at the angelic beings, with the electric tone of catalyzation or of the challenge. We looked at the wing lines, and we started the whole process with the magnetic tone and the very, very inspirational, creative unicorn. So now we are at the
We're now at the Great Felines. And actually, I was going to do that too and sort of come up and arrive at the Great Felines
oh,
because there is sort of an arrival point here with anchoring, a dream and a creation and a purpose, and then having a challenge with it, and then sort of uh, moving into the divine current with the electric tone and service. And we equated that with the angels. Now, arriving into what's called the fourth moon self-existing form started on October 28th. Um, there's this sense of what is coming up from within to come into form. And as Bella said, the question for this tone is what is the form my service will take, and who am I becoming? So with that, as we go along, I think we'll see why I chose the stellar nation of the Great Felines, which remember is a part of us, to equate really with this whole question and with this fourth moon. So as you said, fourth moon concerns measure and form, and we're starting to design what we need to give form to, but we're pulling from the unseen.
mhm.
We're asked to see through our illusions. We're asked to see in the dark, because really, when we think about it, 99% of what quote unquote of reality is invisible. I mean, what's material is just such a small part of what is. Um, and then our main goal in this moon, according to your good conversation with Bella, is we want to connect with our intuition and psychic knowing. So there's a real need to be still and listen to the quiet beneath the noise. so that we can intuit the deeper understanding, because once again, it's coming from within. I just almost feel this. We talk about it being form. I feel like it coming up in the body somehow, which is appropriate for a cat because in the stellar nations, the great feline nation it's a body code. Some of these stellar codes are actually some are soul codes, some are body codes, and this is a body code. So what's coming up and in relation to the world of form? And as we have that owl here, well, let me start with this first. The stellar nation of the great felines in the stellar language is Holonai Fa, and it's a warrior nation. Warriors for the goddess. It's a yin energy. It's a feminine energy, and the whole noble cause or ideal that the great felines are standing up for is freedom or sovereignty. The idea that the creator made everything as an expression of itself and it wants to pour through it, and everything has the right to develop and discover itself with that freedom of experiencing and having that right. So they're very attuned to the masses and allowing that freedom. They're asked to guard the winged lion, so the winged lion can run the divine current. But if a winged lion turns despotic, immediately the great feline is going to be after him, because it's just this is the highest ideal, free will and sovereignty. So, summarizing a little more, they're representing a yin energy, as I said, and their fighting style, therefore, is characterized by a very intuitive and sensitive dominance, the right cerebral hemisphere, feeling again. They're attuned to the secrets of the night. The realms of dreams belong here, and intuition is a spiritual tool. Great felines operate in the feminine way, and that's the way of remembering the real wisdom, the wisdom from within, as opposed to the masculine way, which is to really learn something in a structured way. They both have their validity, but this is what the feminine way and the great felines are about.
Leslie, could we say as perhaps Yin Warriors, the way of the cat warrior is to try and secure a victory without even striking a blow?
Well, let's put it this way. It's extremely strategic, and they may have to strike a blow, but they are not going to go after something. They're going to wait, and they're going to watch, and they're going to observe, and they're going to pick the exact right time to launch out. So they're going to have very efficient. They may have to strike the blow, but it's going to be pretty efficient.
Right.
Maybe until you get into the actual blow, there may be some fight back. But
Yeah, and sorry, Leslie, there's a reason why I say that, particularly in the great scheme of what is going on planetarily at the moment. And this is just from my own meditations and intuitions, but I feel compelled to share, is that these beings are really the protectors of many, many things, not just the goddess, but also sovereignty and free will. And if we have any concerns that we're not being looked after by the cosmos, I would like to point to the great felines, who I've been feeling very, very present for quite a long time, particularly in the last couple of weeks. And they're here very much in a strategic, protective military guise. So that's all I wanted to share. I just
yeah,
wanted to put that out there because I haven't seen any creatures that look quite like this. So what have we got going on here,
go
though?
ahead. Well, let me just remark what you just said.
Yeah.
They're not protecting the goddess, but they're in service to the whole feminine yin way.
Yes.
So, and also, yes, I think as we get into what I'd like to cover, they're very much with us and very much coming in. And you're right, they're very much to be called upon, because I think even why I wanted to equate the fourth moon with them,
Mm.
with this upswelling of coming into form from within, especially after the first three moons, there is that sovereignty that is the upswelling, that each being gets to develop a form. And that's what creation is, this
Right.
matrix of everybody doing this. And yes, the great feline is going to want to
Well, the way
Uh,
that I understand it, Leslie, particularly in terms of the protection of the goddess, is like the dragons. The cats and the dragons are very intimately linked to the Gaia grid, the original grid of planet Earth. And I've said this before, and I don't think it'll come up today, but I like to think of the dragons as being the wave, which is the fronds of the web, and then the cats are the portals or the nodes that connect them all.
oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, they create the wave and the particle, the cats and the dragons. And when I work with the cats and the dragons in geomancy, that's exactly how I work with them. And the cats, as you're probably going to point out, are super specialists when it comes to that kind of strategic portal wormhole technology. And that's what nodal points are, they're entrance and exit points into the grid. So just to
Okay.
put a couple of little tidbits out
Okay.
there too.
Well, you say that, and I get the whole imagination of, how the cat is at the little mouse hole.
Yeah.
Knows it's there, or tracing a bug under a couch. I know it's there. I'm going to wait.
Right, and anyone who's ever looked at a cat will know that if there's something weird in your house, the cat is going to go and sit right exactly where it is to say, "Hey, look at this weird stuff going on over
Yeah,
here."
yeah,
The
yeah,
dog will go
exactly.
around it and avoid it at all
Yeah,
costs.
yeah. Well, I thought it was fun that I just wanted to throw this on here that it's actually noticed. I mean, you can find anything on the internet, but here's a meme with a cat being an owl, and look at the eyes between, an owl and a cat there. They do have a lot of similarities. They're both
Right.
nocturnal predators, excellent night vision, very acute hearing, and their bodies are very adapted for quiet movement. The pads on the cat and the way that the owl flies. So,
And you know what? Just as another, if we're talking about funny memes, anyone who has got into the algorithm of cats as protectors, there is some incredible
oh,
footage out there of the smallest domestic cats taking on wild mountain lions, wild grizzly bears, dogs. Also, I mean, it's quite incredible to see these cats with no fear. And I saw one with a little cat. Suddenly appeared as a dog at a window, and a big cat appears. It must be somewhere up in the mountains. And the dog absolutely, well, he has a moment and has to leave. And then the cat comes in, the little cat looks at the big cat, and the big cat goes, "Ah," and then runs off.
yeah, no,
It's
there's
so funny.
incredible things. Actually, it was interesting because in the year, well, it's a long story, but there was a whole period of time, and it correlated with one of the Divine Plan years where Belgium was locked down, and everybody started sending memes of cats dressed up as little warriors. I've saved all of them; they're great. But anyway, so it's in our psyche.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
all right, what I want to point out, this is just something that weaves interestingly. The very first day of the lunar moon, the moon of challenge, right? When we started that, um, we pointed out that the sun was conjunct exact with Regulus and Algebra. Okay, so Algebra is the neck of the Leo constellation, and Regulus is it's the heart. And actually, I think it was a new moon too.
Yeah, I've got it
So
here, Leslie. 23rd of August. It was a new
yeah,
moon
right.
in Leo
It's in
in
my notes down
stereo.
here.
There we go. Yeah.
So this is interesting because what I want to do here for us is I really want to take us back to what happened in algebra, what happened with the Great Felines. There's a whole backstory, and it's our backstory. And now this is the healed version of this is what's coming forward. But this is what we're being asked to integrate. So, and I think it's fascinating. We'll tie it in with all the current stuff, but let's just remember this. Right at the very beginning of the second moon, this all became conjunct, and algebra is the site of a big, big event in betrayal, which I want to talk about. Okay, so in galactic history, I mean, we often hear that certain ideas or impulses go out and they're like vibratory qualities in the collective. I mean, you can almost call them a virus because every sentient being suddenly gets touched with that vibratory quality over time. And then a choice point comes. What are you going to do with it? So at a time when things were very restless and the dragons were getting into being powerful and the angels had fallen and everybody's kind of, talking about or acting on creating a false matrix, a group of big cats didn't get infected with the idea of let's be powerful or in charge, but their notion of freedom and free will and independence suddenly got very inflated. That's how they felt this vibratory question or quality. And they're like, wait a minute, freedom is the most superior right in the universe. Nobody should question this. And they actually started to believe no one should command anyone, even the creator. So that individuality started disrupting the unity of their army, which wasn't that cohesive anyway because of the cat's independent nature. But they really kind of fell apart and weren't able to act in much cohesion. And it became very much a weak point because they couldn't develop a strategic force. And as they continued to exalt this value of independence, it eventually led to a tear, then an alienation, and then we're going to see an annihilation. And then, you know, as all these things work with in psychology or whatever you want to call it, with these feelings, some of the big cats became very lonely, and then they began to believe, oh, I'm lonely because you can't tolerate my independence. So they withdrew from meaningful relationships, withdrew from their contacts, but then they contracted into their own small inner universe where they felt like, well, I just want to live according to my own laws and without constraint. So this is kind of free will gone awry, if you will. And those rebellious cats, a whole group of them went to a star called Beta Leonis Minoris, and they began to gather and form a colony. And this kind of increased the drum roll, you know, for this whole movement. Now, the dragons noticed this. The Great Khan said, whoa, isn't that nice? Why don't you guys go have an affair with those cats and create some hybrid warriors? We'll have the best of the dragons and the best of the cats. So those loyal dragons went off to find the cats. Now the cats received them, but not understanding that this was a usury. A lot of those cats fell deeply in love with the dragons. And there was a star, Shertan, which is kind of in the lion's womb of Leo, where the cats and the dragons got together, and there was a lot of mating there, and there was a lot of pillow talk. So the secrets of the cat forces that were guarding different winged lion outposts were given over. So, pillow talk. What happened then, that was information that allowed the fallen great dragon and angels to approach Algebra, the neck of the lions, and to attack. Now, it was a really low octave attack because it was shielded by the angels. The lion actually knew it was coming, but if the lion had responded on the level that the attack was coming in, he wouldn't have been able to preserve the light. He chose to die instead of to give his life over instead of responding in kind. And this marks in kind of an energetic sense, this marks the first time that the dark was defeated by the light. And the lesson there, or the clarion call, was, you know what? We're in a galaxy where we're asked in this creation cycle to learn about our light as humans by understanding the dark. We're supposed to be experiencers and go into the depth of the shadow to find our light. So what happened here is that, and it was a great betrayal, because if you think about it, there were many great felines guarding this. They were innocent. They didn't know it was coming. They were essentially betrayed by their own kind, those back at the pillow talk who gave it all away. And what happened is massive slaughter of the great felines. And the many were killed, and probably 2/3 or more were pushed out. There was a few open portals that the dragons kept closing, the last one that they could get out of took them up to the Andromeda Galaxy. So, and then there were a few great felines left, but not a lot. So the whole force in the galaxy was changed. The Milky Way galaxy, the tone of it tilted yang rather than yin, because we didn't have this huge feminine force here. They had been pushed out. And what that means also is the stellar worlds that were occupied by great felines, because in the stellar nations, we have pathways of stellar worlds that are occupied by each nation. Those stellar worlds were not really inhabited by the great feline energy very, very deeply. So the radiations from them were not big. So in us, that whole feeling of sovereignty and free will was less than, as well as the feminine being pushed out. Okay, I want to also mention, yes, indeed, there were births. There were hybrid births between the dragons and the great felines. And a lot of those were just tragedies. They didn't really get the best of both nations. And some of them escaped to the Andromeda Galaxy with the other great felines. Some were left orphaned, wandering around the galaxy. Khan did put out the word to the dragons, grab them. I want to see which ones I could use. And when they were caught, I mean, it was merciless. They were either trained as dragons if they had the ability, and they just returned into sort of killing machines, or they were eliminated because they didn't have enough of either. However, there were some that were wandering around, basically orphaned. And the position of these, whether they're wandering in the galaxy, Milky Way galaxy, or made it to the Andromeda, and I'm bringing this up because some of us have, we can have hybrid feline dragon codes. And I'll give you a blog to put in under this because it talks about some of the consequences of that. These are both body codes. There can be a lot of repercussions in our bodies. There can be repercussions like if a great feline coded woman, as a human, one of us, meets a very deeply coded dragon, they might really love each other, but they literally may have fertility problems because there's this innate rejection from all these energetic patterns in us. And then you've also got that nobody wanted to help. The great feline mothers of these were like terrified of these beings. They didn't want to help them in case the dragon nature came out too much. And I partly bring this up because this is a whole, it's part of our psychology as humans, especially if we have these codes, that abandonment, you don't fit anywhere, you're not one or the other, who am I? All right, so what happened?
Sorry, Leslie, just to interject there, a couple of things came to my mind. So that story is somewhat similar to the fallen angels and the human women who then gave birth to the Nephilim, who were also not the same way as their mothers. But also what's fascinating is I was just recently in some local caves and the guide was pointing out some bones and he said, this is the bones not of a saber-toothed tiger, but of an animal. He said saber-toothed tigers actually are not real. They're just something that kind of mythology is created. But he said we did have saber-toothed animals that were actually half hyena and half cat, who are somewhat the closest prox that we can say to these kind of hybrids of dragons and cats. So it makes me think that maybe some of these beings did even walk on the earth at some point, and we find them as these kind of slightly strange but extinct animals that seem to carry DNA from other animals into sort of one space. So we do actually have evidence of these kinds of beings being found, albeit in slightly different forms, but the hybridization is definitely there.
Yeah, yeah. And you're right. So, and this is one aspect of it, but it's kind of interesting because all these are energy patterns and they really do have deep roots in our own beings as humans and in our psyches. And so now when this group who escaped got to the Andromeda Galaxy, they were given a star, Christus, I think it is. And that word actually means refuge in the stellar language.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think, okay, these are uh, Yin Warriors of the goddess. They escaped. They got to the Andromeda galaxy, which was is a Yin galaxy. The goddess is running it at apparently quite peaceful and a nice place to be in that regard. So maybe that's wonderful, right? Not really,
Oh.
because you don't get to a place and just suddenly be okay because the place is nice. They're carrying all their trauma and wounding. And the shock and trauma was outrageous because, as we said, the light was defeated by the dark. That's that first realization. The galaxy tilted young. There was an unrightful, suddenly shocking expulsion, like just pushed out. There was an understanding. Well, those who were pushed out felt deeply betrayed, but they were being loyal to upholding their divine assignment. They were guarding free will and sovereignty, and they were betrayed by their own sisters and brothers. So there was anger and rage and vengeance and guilt and shame. And then those who got left behind, there was abandonment, confusion, catatonia, or even if they went, frozenness, vacancy. Some were detached, lost, victimhood, fear, defeat, isolated, anxiety. So there was all these patterns that they arrived with, so it wasn't simple. It wasn't just.
So we could understand, Leslie, as yin beings, they would be more on the emotion, as we would understand it as humans, more on the emotional spectrum. And just reading down that list, I think that probably there are not too many human beings on the planet until very recently who would not have resonated with at least one of those as some sort of emotional trauma that they've been working through. I mean, some of them like abandonment, fear, defeat, isolation, anxiety. These are super common things to find when doing healings or clearings on people's fields because they're some of the most predominant emotional traumas that we carry. So, is it possible that we carry these trauma codes in our DNA from these experiences with our great feline DNA ancestors?
Oh, definitely. However that works, literally or
Um,
not. But we have to know we're all energy patterns, we're all frequencies, and these are frequencies in the field, and these are in the galactic field and they're literally. I mean, when Bay and Annika read them, they read them as frequencies from Antares, but then they were guided to flesh them out, to into this their galactic myths, and they are the forms, the Pegasus and the Great Feline. They are forms that we can relate to and that are real, but behind them, we really have to realize it's energy patterns and we're all of it. And just like we said, well, an idea goes around uh, and it's like a vibration and it can be like a virus that just starts infecting everyone. Well, these energy patterns are, it's the same. So it's like, this is our challenge of the time, really, as we know, what are we going to identify with? What are we really? Are we these energy patterns? Are there other ones? Can we cast our look elsewhere? So anyway, as we go on, let's see what happens because I think
mhm.
we'll weave in. So once they got up there, they're on this star, and there was four kind of emotional reactions. It kind of broke down into four groups. You had very, very militant, very vengeful, very angry, almost dragon-like type uh, reactions. And that colony was like, wanted a fight, wanted to pick a fight, on the defensive, say one thing and they're at you, right? Then they had a colony of people who were just detached, lost, victim mentality, no energy, just barely alive, catatonic. That's how they took it. Who also got projected on a lot. Then you have the isolated loner. Those are like, I cannot deal with any community at all. Do not get me near anybody. They go off. And then you had the poor hybrid feline dragon who nobody wanted to talk to. So we went into a period of kind of a mystery play happening where the militant ones needed something to attack. So they started attacking the detached lost ones. But over time, it was like almost no fun or no point because there
No
was no
fight.
like reaction. There was no fight. These guys were so kind of catatonic. Although they got pushed after a while to a point that in their like letting go and despair of everything, they started going, they started getting a little mad and they went, what the hell? What's the difference if I die? So they did start fighting back. So it was never quite equal. But over time, what happened is they sort of evened out into sort of they weren't against each other. They were just sort of like, okay. There was a little evolution. The loners didn't do much. The hybrids were, you know, but these interactions were going on, and sometimes beings would be a little bit of each based on their emotional happenings or maturity. So what happened over time is everybody was given this planet from the star, all the four groups. And in being on the planet, the militant ones, the catatonic ones, and the loner ones kind of found a unity, because what they did is they all turned against the hybrid ones. So once they had something to focus on as being against, they could unite a little bit, and they expelled all the hybrids to the moon of the planet, which is named Kuga. So this whole mystery play is going on, but by the same token, they're exploring their feelings, they're going through them, they're coming to new, I don't know, they're not healed yet, but they're coming to like solutions in a way, step rate. So I don't need to repeat this. Let's go to what happened. This is interesting. This is interesting for all of us, and I wonder about this with Three Eye Atlas. They did enough work among themselves that it called forth grace. It called forth a bigger consciousness that said, basically the response was, you're now ready to receive some help because you've done enough work. And I'll call it grace. So in the Milky Way galaxy, there is a huge Black Panther constellation. Now, we don't know about it because we have it broken up into the Alpha Telescopy, and we have it as the Peacock Star. We have a bunch of little, we call it a bunch of different things. But Bayanonico, when they read into the galactic records, it's like, no. The Great Felines have this incredible presence of a Black Panther in the sky overlooking us. And this is my little drawing of it, if you have to see how it comes together, okay? So the grace is that from the very cradle of the stellar nations, which is the Peacock Star, which is just this flame of divine truth, freedom's eternal fire, right use of free will, the sacredness of freedom, as we've said, for fulfilling one's destiny. A queen was sent forth from the Peacock Star. And her name is Myanmar Ankh. And she was sent up to the Andromeda Galaxy now to become the queen and leader and really the healer of these four groups. And there's a whole, as Bayanonico would talk about it, there was a whole period of time where on that planet Togo, where she was guiding them, they set up a civilization that was almost analogous to Egypt. And it made me kind of wonder if it was like parallel Egyptian times. There were pyramids and everything. And think about how Egypt just revered cats, So there probably was some kind of connection going on. But what she was doing up there is she was healing them and training them and getting them to feel their own selves again and their connection with the goddess and their own sovereignty. And she very specifically trained them as the dragons are trained. She helped them gain all the initiations that a dragon would get into all the elements and, to mercy. And she did that for a couple of reasons. So they could have they would still be their Yin warrior from within, but they would have that kind of solidity, that coherency that kind of training would for their own being, but also so they could operate in the dark And they were sent out to many galaxies, including to our galaxy, during these periods as they healed. But so that they would understand the dark better and know, what would a dragon maybe be doing next, because this is the way he fights. So I'm going to be a little more strategically aware of that. So the reason I have this picture of these beautiful cats is they were just made exquisite. There's a deep, deep, deep healing.
Isn't it interesting that the cat is called Myanmar Ang because Myanmar is a country, and I've never looked into this. It's a country with a lot of challenging history, what we would used to call Burma, and of course it's a Buddhist country. And many of the Asian countries have a lot of big cats in their iconography. I'm just looking into the Khmer civilization the last few days, which is very much a combination of dragons and cats, actually, and the Garuda from the Bird Nation. So, and there's lots of snakes. So they're very interesting cultures when you read them through the Stellar Nations. But I wonder if there's a link there, Leslie,
I don't know,
etymologically
because
speaking.
Bay and Nautical get thing. I mean, they speak whatever the stellar language is. I've heard them say things. It's interesting because Hungarian is probably the closest to the stellar language, but it's not the stellar language.
Hmm,
So
who
I
knows?
don't know. It could be or not. I have no idea. So what we've had since they were asked to bring forth the 13 stellar nations, into our consciousness in 2005 and 6, when they did that, they were told by the delegates of each stellar nation who came forth and helped them attune up to Antares. They were told, we have to switch from a planetary consciousness to a stellar consciousness, to a galactic consciousness. We have to know our truth. We have to know what our cosmic history is. It's time for us to wake up. So they anchored all those 13 stellar nations. They brought them in and they brought in the various pathways, and that's what the 2-volume set is. But then starting in 2008, immediately after they had anchored everything, they were shown that because we hadn't really, as a collective, hadn't hadn't reached the tipping point to move into any kind of ascension. I mean, there were potentialities. Everything was lined up like in 2002, 3, 4. A lot of influx came in of spiritual help. And it was actually 1 year was designed to work on the mental body, the emotional body, the spiritual body, one after another. But in our own world, what we had, like, well, so we had the World Trade Center happen, which kind of created this sort of weird time lock. We had when these finer messages started hitting those spiritual groups that had emerged, unfortunately, many of the spiritual groups started falling into kind of a spiritual ego. Like, we got this message. Oh, it's so important. Oh, we got to do it. The necessary cooperation that is actually the bedrock of the ascension and really the Aquarian age didn't happen because of that. So everything was, the plan became different. So they were shown that there was a divine plan of the years, and there was actually a potential ascension portal in 2021. They were given a whole run up to 2021. And since then, that didn't happen. Although we know that it shook, we know that a lot's happened. I mean, the next one hypothetically is 2030. And that may change because everything's changing. As she said, it's really hard to read now because what are humans doing, and things are so up. But why I'm giving you this big background is they've been specifically asked every single year. There's been kind of a divine plan, a flow of different energies coming in from the different stellar nations, different parts of us, revealing more and more, showing us more stars. And that reflects two things. First of all, collective consciousness is getting more ready for it. It's like, oh, we can see a new star because we can comprehend the concept behind it. But also with these further stories, there was deeper insight into the lapse, because the whole idea in the stellar nations is that most of those nations have in some way, by using free will, left their divine destiny, and now they're on their way back through redemption. And that's what the ascension will be. And there's nothing wrong with that because the creator asked us to explore light and dark. But now it's about turning all the experiences in, alchemizing the best out of them, because we are this whole ascension idea is to move into being a co-creator in more of a non-dual or fifth dimensional or above type of consciousness, Christ consciousness. So
Right.
anyway,
Yeah, sorry, go on, Leslie. I was just going to add something in, but I'll wait till you finished.
no, go for it. I was just,
Well, you know this, but it might just be worth repeating because we've shared it in a few videos, but maybe not everyone's seen those. So we've been exploring as a tribe, and certainly myself and Leslie and Bella and quite a few of us, the possibility that the stellar nations really represent our DNA, not just our two strands of human DNA, but the tentaferic strands of DNA plus the extra one, which makes the magical 13 or the quantum field. Now, I personally find this much more useful in this moment, so it doesn't make the stars and the archetypes in the stellar nations seem like some sort of abstract head candy, which perhaps some people in the past have erroneously thought. I see it as an interactive bridge internally to my own DNA. And for sure, there is a part of my DNA that is absolutely great feline because everything that you've talked about today, weirdly, are activities that I do. I go for walks in the dark. I learn to test myself by listening, using my senses, all things that cats would do. And I've long chuckled at myself for doing these things, thinking that's kind of weird. And I realized relatively recently, this is just my cat playing out. It likes to go out, roam the territory, understand where everything is, understand where there might be some issues, make the area secure, and know that I can do it whether the lights are on or the lights are off. This is the way of a cat. If you sit and watch a cat, well, it'll do exactly the same thing every day, which is pretty much that. So we can identify in our 3D behavior where the DNA perhaps is coming from. And then if we use the stellar nations pathway, we can identify which star constellations, all of which, as it turns out, through the exploration of the 13 moons and the Knights of the Round Table and the stellar nations, turns out to be Archangel Michael's overall plan for us to integrate all of the aspects of the warring nations that stellar nations features so beautifully. And this information came into our tribe just over the last few weeks, and it started to make sense of various disparate threads that we were looking at. So I just share that again, Leslie. I know many of the people will have heard it, but maybe some people are coming to it new and trying to see the correlation. And that's something that we've been using as an example to help people make sense. So I hope that wasn't inappropriate to share that.
yeah, no, I'm so happy you said that because I think the ongoing challenge, and it's year by year, it gets less out there and more in here because we really are, I've often said
True.
stellar worlds are nodal points of consciousness. They're just like cells, but in our larger light body or something, but they're absolutely inside of us.
Yes, they
And
are.
I love the way you use them, just feel like, oh, this is my cat part, because it really opens up our life, our
It
body, our
activates,
everything.
right?
Yeah. So the thing is, last year, 2024, talking about this incoming energies, the incoming energy of 2024 was the return of the healed warrior nations, both the great felines and the dragons. So we've just talked about the patterning and what happened with the felines, and now in mass, starting last year, coming back into the Milky Way galaxy, into and back here. So that becomes our charge to integrate and heal.
Mhm.
And I just took this from the book because I think it's nice to hear. The catharsis of remembering our great feline codes pours down upon us now because the cat warrior living inside of us, as you just said, has been repressed for a long, long time. But now its time has come. A bridge is being established between the Andromeda Galaxy and the Milky Way, as through the fate alternative of the approaching ascension, the entire Milky Way galaxy is going through a reattunement process, part of which is that its galactic twin, the Andromeda Galaxy, is fully cooperating with it. And then, therefore, then the energies, meaning our sacred stellar codes of the cat warriors, which include the respect for freedom of being, are flowing back into us, flowing back into the space. And it's our charge to receive them, which I thought was interesting in terms of a lot of the understanding of Atlas now is let's receive these codes. We are to be receptive. Let's listen. There's something for us here. And I heard Barbara Handclough talk yesterday. She's been on a few shows about Three Eye Atlas, and she actually did say, she said she feels that the Andromeda Galaxy is coming in much faster because the Milky Way and the Andromeda are apparently coming together. But she said it's coming faster. So this could be one iteration of it.
Right, and as I was sharing with Leslie just before we hit record today, this being on the 29th of October, we've just had, of course, Three Eye Atlas at the perihelion with the sun, and supposedly this morning, from what we can see from some material, there was a huge explosion, a solar flare, possibly on the far side of the sun, not as yet known, but all of this, what we're sharing with the stellar nations, is directly correlating to what is going on with our interactions between ourselves and Three Eye Atlas right now. And for many people, it might sound woo-woo, but if we understand that we are universal, eternal beings, some aspect of us absolutely has to be on all of the comets in the universe around us. It has to be, because that's quantum universality. And yet, not everybody is able to communicate with those aspects of themselves, which is another way of saying, in Lakesh, I am another you. So we're offering this as a pathway and a tool here, really, to get people into the mindset of thinking like, well, how do my codes manifest through me? And then you start to see your snake, your dragon, your cat, because they're quite clear once you know that part of yourself. So then to be able to reach inside and communicate with that original part of you that was a great feline suddenly isn't such a difficult task. It just requires a bit of that inwards reflection over a period of time. Then communication lines can open up to that part of yourself, wherever it is in the universe, whether it's great feline, whether it's dragon, whether it's snake, whether it's on Atlas, whether it's on Swan, whether it's on Mars or
Or
anywhere
a
else
given
at all.
star, you want to go for a given star, just put your mind there.
Exactly. It's just a dial, everybody. All we're doing is tuning in the frequency of the brain and eye receptors into a different reality. So, again, just sharing this as a way of understanding why me and Leslie have been sharing so much of this material, why me and Bella do what we do. We're trying to create bridges into the internal world, which might sound bizarre. Why would I want to go there? I want to go and visit the rest of the
That's
universe.
what goes there, or that's here.
Right.
It's our backyard, but it's inside.
Yes, and as I put in an email recently, so many people know the as above, so below, but sort of ignore the as within, so without, which is equally critical because our outer world is a reflection of our inner world. And if we feel our outer world is empty and hollow, that might give us a clue as to why we need to start building our internal ascension structure with conscious interaction between us and our DNA. This is our DNA is a highly intelligent piece of creator. And we want to take it down to a laboratory and get some other dude we've never met to take care of it for us. I don't know. It's not for me. I want to
Yeah,
meet
yeah,
my own
no,
DNA myself with nobody in between
yeah,
doing things. So anyway,
yeah.
we
No,
progress.
I think it's nice that you talk about really you're feeling the return of the cat. And literally,
Yep.
we have to realize when I said earlier that the influence wasn't here. The stellar worlds that are on their pathway were not that radiated. We weren't getting that much influence. If we had big cat um, codes, we could be weak in body, weak in will. It manifests in different ways. So this coming in 2024 and now really asking to be integrated, particularly I think now, given all the stuff that's going on, um, I think you could really almost expect some kind of physical response because you're literally getting the light codes of the cat that you did not get. They were not here. They were
Right.
pushed out. So, I mean, they were here faintly. It's like you're getting a little blip, blip, blip instead of a steady flow of water. So I'd like to say, remember Beta Leonis, where they amassed, which was their kind of rebellious center. It's actually become an incredible realm of rehabilitation. And the great felines learned to master supreme will in the noblest sense. So this allows them to have the strength and wisdom to serve by being carriers of and models of a new level of balance between our individual free will and supreme will. So they keep life in the light and peace created by the light. But this is key, and we'll talk a little bit more about this. I think what we're being asked to is reclaim our sovereignty, but also know how to use it within the context or the ecosystem of divine will. And I'll get into that in a minute.
Again,
And that's
referring to Mikhail, his great mantra is stand in my light and you have nothing to fear, which is another way of saying don't deviate outside of my light code
right,
frequencies. And you'll be fine if you do, which is free will. Well, that's up to you.
right,
I can't protect you in those spaces, which is
right,
kind of a good deal, I think.
right. And these are two forces we haven't known how to, we just have not arbitrated well,
Mm.
if you think about it, as humans. And the dragons are warriors of the divine will, and then the felines stand up for free will. So these are two arbitrating forces that were both really hurt and both were deeply healed coming back in 2024. The dragons is a whole other story of healing that we can tell when we equate it with another tone or something. But this is this big message, though, for us is understanding our sovereignty, understanding our relationship to creation, understanding who we are, what we want to bring in form, how we want to serve. But how do we do that? What's our context? So, but let me keep going because I can.
Well, I think it's also worth bearing or drawing rather a relevance to the world we live in, Leslie, because we can see now in our society the Luciferian extent of free will and how it was given to us and how it was promoted. But it doesn't give us sovereignty. In fact, quite the opposite. It gives us a sort of a chaotic free will that allows other beings to use that to do whatever they want to do behind the scenes. And we can sort of see that unfolding in the world around us at the moment. And then if you go across to the divine world with the dragons, it almost feels like so tight, there's no room to operate. So I think a lot of this journey has been balancing those two energies of understanding free will, but within certain frequencies so that I can be myself, and divine will so that I follow what I came here for with a little bit of unique flavor and personality, but without
Yeah,
falling out of the frequency of God.
yeah, I'm going to get into that in a minute, a little more specifically. But you're right. It's our big arbitration, and I do want to say a little bit more about Beta Leonis. So this is like the heart of the cat warner. But here's the important thing. This is part of the healing. This aspect of ourselves on a healed level now understands that we keep our dignity if we stand in our true nature quietly and solidly, and that we're actually the freest when we no longer put the emphasis on the desire to be free, but by simply being free, and that as these independent cats or the free will, we will really belong somewhere when we feel the power of unity and don't want to separate. So there's a lot of subtle nuances, but a lot of learning in here. And I think that's what we're being asked to really integrate and make real in our lives,
Yeah.
in our relationships, in our seeing, in the way we conceive of things. So I just have these pictures here as basically, okay, here we are on Earth. These patterns still exist, right? The militant, the loner, the oh, I can't do it, I'm a victim, and the one who's so yeah, the patterns have been pointed out. The reasons behind them have been pointed out. This is our chart. And a lot of us are catching on, but this
Maybe, just maybe, Leslie, we can use this as a way of finding compassion because you can use all of those four rules and you can even put world stage leaders into those brackets when you see the wounding of even the most despotic people. And it's like, well, how did he get to be like that? And you see the wounding happened at a very early age. And it's like, well, that guy never had a chance either. So how can I be mad at him? And this is the divine will that we're currently, oh, sorry, divine mercy that we're currently in the energy of right now.
yeah, yes,
Yeah,
exactly. And
use these
compassion softens our
archetypes.
heart.
Right, exactly.
And we're in the stellar nations, trust and compassion come as one quality of and I thought, wait a minute, why that's two different seeds of Christ consciousness.
Hmm.
What I've come to see is trust. You're trusting that there's a divine light in every single being, and you're looking for it. I
Yes.
mean, maybe the size of a pinprick, but but then you are then that that engenders compassion, like exactly what you just said. It's like, oh my God, why is that so small? Why do they have a hard time? Why do they have a hard time if I look at them and want to see their light in them? Why do they reject me? Because they're so wounded. And then my heart opens in compassion. And that is one of the seven seeds of Christ consciousness.
And if we
Yeah.
want to progress to a new Earth reality that's more non-dual, we simply have to go through that process to see everybody is in the location, even if we don't like what they've done in the past or we get a icky feeling when they come on the TV.
Yeah.
There are reasons why we get those icky feelings. Probably those people who are giving them also have them about themselves, and then it also brings more compassion. So there are lots of ways to find
Yeah.
compassion, and the only reason you won't is because you don't want to or something is blocking that. That's been my
Yes.
experience anyway.
Yes. Okay. Just a little bit more. What I
Here we go,
want to
yeah.
bring out, I want to bring out the crew constellation. And we're talking about these qualities of Christed consciousness, like a non-dual. non-polarized consciousness, or fifth, sixth dimension and such.
Yeah.
So in the stellar nations, it's the temple of Christ, or Christ consciousness, is in the center of the Crew constellation. And the Crew constellation is, you may have to let my cat in. Made quite a ruckus. Okay, the Crew constellation is, the four pillars of the Crew constellation are the principles of, well, the divine principles of creation. We've got divine love, divine law, divine mercy, and divine, well, Delta Crucis, divine will. And they happen to be coming through right now, basically. So if I put the dates down, presently, divine will, Delta Crucis is coming through until Saturday. Then starting, and actually starting today, we've got an overlap with Gakru coming through, which is mercy. And then we get Baykru coming through, which is divine law. And I'm not sure if I know it's November 3rd. I'm not sure how long that one goes, but Akru, divine love, comes through November 3rd to 8th. And when I say come through, I mean it's conjunct to come through the sun's gate, the sun, be radiated by the sun.
And also,
Did you
listen,
want to say
just on
something?
that point, because Three Eye Atlas and the Sun are going in opposite directions, Three Eye Atlas has already activated or picked up, we can say not activate, so that's incorrect. It's picked up the codes from Acru and Bcru already because it's past those and it's come to the convergence point now. Here we are, October the 29th, really with Atlas Three Eye conjunct the Sun, but also all of them are now conjunct these two first stars in the Southern Cross. So there's an interesting dynamic at play there that they're going in opposite directions. So they're picking up codes, and it feels like Atlas 3i is getting activated right now, especially if my disturbed body system is anything to go by. And I know
I
many other
know, I
people are
know.
feeling it too. So we're
Yeah,
not sure exactly all of these things, but I think it tells us, if nothing else, that we're at this incredibly pivotal moment where all of the convergence that we talked about with the convergence a few 2 weeks ago is now really much coming into our awareness in the 3D,
right.
and we're talking about it right here.
Yeah, and I will point a few more things out about this. So these four stars actually correlate with the ventricle. We have four ventricles in our heart. It's like a bridge. This is actually the ascension bridge. If we open the heart, we go up to the temple, to the Christ of consciousness. There are the seven stars of the Big Dipper are the seven qualities or wisdoms of Christ consciousness, and they actually exist we have an ethereal field around our heart chakra. They exist as they were planted. Well, this is according to Bayononico. When Christ consciousness came in Jesus, he left different frequencies. That's what's been happening all these 2,000 years. They've been fought, but they're consistent frequencies that are coming up. Anyway, we have these seven wisdoms in the etheric field of our heart, and they're definitely like being blossomed. They can be watered into their fullness, and especially now. So what I wanted to show you, though, I often think of the four pillars of creation as a grand ecosystem that we live within. These four principles, literally they interact, and a little bit on how they interact. They're always working together. They're always vibrating all at once. They're always affecting all of us and each other. Now, we more easily identify with divine love and divine mercy as qualities of Christ consciousness, but we have to understand all four are happening, and we can recognize and express them. And we tend to turn against divine will because we're struggling for our autonomy with our free will, but divine will is higher than our autonomy. And when we revolt against divine will, over and over again, we get into the repeating patterns, and that becomes our pain and separation when we're no longer part of the whole. But here's the interesting thing. What do we struggle with divine will? Because if we actually really thought about it and could rest into it and know it, divine will is the intention of the light within us. It's our own divine destiny. We actually chose this actually as resonant consciousnesses when we individuated. Um, when we lose touch with that intention, the light within us, the shadow appears. But it's just, to me, it's like, oh my God, I'm acting like I have to push against this big force because it's against me. And it's actually what's in me and for me. But this is our growth cycle.
Mm.
So it's time now for all the creations of our illusions to collapse. And we've got to reconstruct ourselves and live from the light substance of our soul to realize our destiny, which is very much the fourth moon. So yes, I'm equating the great felines, but I'm also saying, well, isn't this interesting that the crew constellation is coming through too, which is feeds into all this, and actually feeds into the central question that the great felines um, have to address in bringing things into form that we have to address.
Right. In
So
fact, I'm really glad that you bought the, because I know that the crew constellation is not part of the Great Feline Nation, but it is absolutely, even in the moment that we're recording today, it's absolutely the energy that we're in. And maybe if I can just
yeah,
add something, Leslie, to that last piece about divine will and mercy, because I have my
let me go
son
back.
on that one of divine will and mercy. And what I've come to understand over the last few years through a lot of my own inner meditation work is that divine will is often compromised by the lack of divine mercy in all of us. The part of us that wants to see righteous judgment, righteous
Mm,
retribution on others. And what that actually does is blocks us. We block ourselves through that inner division of wanting to see these things meted out to others and not understanding the others' own situation as to how they got there, which probably in the end is not so different from something that we're doing. And so that lack of mercy for others because of the lack of compassion and understanding the totality of another being's journey to get to that moment actually completely blocks our ability to tune into our divine will and let it flow.
yes, yes, all these, there's an incredible ecosystem. They're
Yeah,
actually really like cosmic laws, and
yeah,
cosmic laws are in effect on every level, but we've lost touch with it. And when you talk about judgment, I mean,
yeah,
the antidote for judgment is acceptance, and that's one
right.
of the wisdoms of the in our heart. It's one of the seven Christ wisdoms.
Right. And
And
I
I
share
don't know,
that
I
today
didn't,
because the energy of this moment feels very much like a day of atonement or day of judgment, which is not to say that, we should be scared, but this is the moment where we get our hearts weighed on the scales. And if we're still carrying that sense of division and wanting other people to suffer because of some perception of something we think that they did, then the scales are going to be lopsided. So I'm sharing that as, hey, if you still have that about anything that you're absorbing from the narrative, I would suggest that's a really good place to do some immediate meditation work to get to the
right,
place of
right.
divine mercy because it's absolutely essential and it's being activated in these days that we are recording. So I just share that as maybe something people might find useful.
Well, you know what's very on point about that is the three stars revealed in 2020, which was the year of the whale and the redemption of the fallen angel, could not have been revealed if a collective consciousness was not able to realize the necessity of total surrender,
Wow.
which is what
Yeah.
brings mercy in.
Yes, exactly.
Um, so we saw it, and it's there. It's outworking. All this is outworking. And I didn't mean to have the slide up, but since it's here, I forgot to take it out. Um, actually, the bear, the big bear is the totem animal for Christ consciousness, and these seven stars are the mystery schools, really, where each aspect of Christ consciousness is taught, and then there's pathways. The father's way is the divine law and divine will. The mother's way is divine love. And then we're the divine children, which you just talked about, mercy. Oh, I'm sorry. Um, we have to accept that we are the sons and daughters, the human children who carry these divine qualities. And we need to understand the pathway of mercy, grace, redemption. And so I started this by saying, well, I didn't start it, but in the middle, I said, finally, Myanmar Ankh went up because they deserved grace. They had done enough. And I'm wondering now if we are in the right mind, which you just said, if we're potentially being given some kind of grace, if we can receive it, which will help us be the human children carrying divine qualities. And I just like this picture to end up
Mm,
on.
nice.
But this is all I have to say.
Well, as always, Leslie, fascinating. And, I think that this presentation, this stellination, this moment, it's all very much on point. I think it was really significant and important to bring up the crew constellation, which is something that in our tribe and many of our audience will know why we're bringing up because we've tracked it quite a lot since we first started doing a lot of this. But it feels like we're in the moment, like, and you just said it, you know, are we getting triggered, polarized, divided internally with people around us, probably people that we love and care about? Are we getting triggered by the endless amounts of BS and turgid narratives presented to us? And if the answer is yes, rather than sit back on the sofa and say, "Hell, you know what, I'm just going to cop out and wait for it all to happen on the ascension," it's like, well, if you do that, first of all, it might be tricky for you because you've still got to overcome that little internal issue. But also, that doesn't help the collective. That's still in service to self. If we're in
Right.
service to the all, then we're going to go, oh my God, I've got some of this going on. It's an imperative on me to take spiritual, mature responsibility
Uh-huh.
for this. Because as you said, if you think about the cats who got exiled, if we're wandering around with all of this turgid, divisive crap in our fields, and then we come into others who don't, chances are we might start bringing them down to our frequency, which at the karmic level is also not something you want to be doing. So we're sharing all of this not to be teachers wagging our fingers and saying we've got this crack, because I definitely had to experience all of this quite painfully, quite recently, as Leslie knows, to come to these understandings. But I have to say, at the end of it, I have no hatred or anything in my heart for anybody, even the big mafia bosses. In fact, I'm quite impressed with the service that they've done for God to create duality for us. So there are
Mm.
lots of clever tools to get around these mechanisms if we don't watch the mainstream media, because that absolutely is in the divisive space. So Leslie, is there anything else you'd like to add at this point? Anywhere you want to point people? I know the Great Felines and the Dragons is a big topic that you've talked a lot about over the last few years with the ladies from Hungary and many things you've shared today. But is there any resources you'd like to share with people right
Yeah,
now?
I'll send you some to put under because I made a specific video about the healing and a blog on, how the lack of great feline radiations can hurt the body. And so people may be interested in that. So I'll send you that next. And basically, I think when you talk about surrender and mercy, and we seem to be getting a message of being quiet and listening and still, I mean, on some levels, maybe it's as simple as just, that's it. Just be there and accept it, It's
Well,
not simple, but it is.
yeah, but when we cross-reference the Mayan dream spell, universal time codes with the stellar nations, there is the dragon, of course, which is the primordial force that starts the dragon. And one of its qualities is not only nurturing and birthing, but to just be. And it
Right.
sounds so easy, but when you've had the contortions of a hijacked, programmed mind, aka the Matrix, inside of you, giving all kinds of rubbish projections, just being is not something that's actually that easy. I mean, I spent 2 years in a monastery just being in meditation, and I found that pretty hard. It's amazing what the mind can conjure up with to keep you distracted from just being. So,
I
again,
know.
if you have
I
that
know.
experience in meditation, you're not the first, and I'm sure you're not alone in that either. But, this is a moment to really enjoy looking at the dandelions, looking at the birds in the trees, and just going, wow, isn't that amazing? What's the ecosystem behind that? Because that will take you all afternoon if you do it properly. And then you'll just learn lots of amazing things. And then you
Right.
can just spend a whole day just being with nature rather than just being with YouTube, which, by the way, if you were doing, you might have caught this show. And if you didn't, well, then you wouldn't know anything about what we've talked about. So
I know.
there
So
are
it's a mixed
paradoxes to all
bag.
of this with tongue
We
in
have to
cheek.
we have to rely on where we're led when we're
Yeah.
suddenly said, wait, and then we find it on the algorithm. Okay, that's all right.
Right.
It's
The
for us
magical
now.
algorithms. Yes.
Right. All
So we
right.
share
Thank
all of
you so
this with
much.
some levity and humour. But Leslie, thank you so much for jumping on and doing this. Looking forward to some of our gang gathering very, very soon. Lots of excitement amongst our tribe. Lots of excitement about the unfolding journey. And as a final thought, Leslie, do you have anything to suggest to people about Atlas or the codes or anything else that you didn't share today?
No, I think we said it, and oh boy, there's such a proliferation on YouTube, and some of
Right.
it very good and some of it not. And now NASA's putting up their defense shield. Yeah, I think what we can say is like
Right.
all these reactions just give us the panorama of our human what humans are thinking.
Well,
And
and
in
so I
that
guess.
panorama we have a choice, and let's make the choice. Let's move up.
And with the Great Felines on board and integrated into our inner Knights of the Round Table or inner court, we are embodying both the great warriors that they are, but also the jaguar shamans. I mean, really, in the Mayan dream spell, the White Wizard is the jaguar cat shaman, the jaguar warrior, the same as in the Aztec culture. You know, they had shaman jaguar warriors, those that use magic portals as well as warrior skills. So, you know, it's not that we want to go out picking fights with anybody. Having those virtues embodied within us gives us the strength, but it also gives us the emotive quality of when to make a right decision, a strategic decision as a warrior, and when to hang back. And so those are all useful qualities, maybe just in day to day, whether you your mouth and vent something or just go, I think that's probably not the best moment to share. And
Yeah,
I'll
you're exactly right. And that is part of the healing that in our integration. What is the word warrior? We have such war
Mm,
is such a corrupt concept now because what we're talking about here, we're talking about very noble um, feelings for standing up for what's right. Uh, and that's just not our the way war is on the earth anymore. It's just, it's power games and money.
yeah.
So I almost wish we could have a different word for this kind of noble, whatever, standing up for these principles.
Well,
Um,
knights, we can think of them as
yeah,
knights with
the
the
knights,
chivalric
really.
code. Yeah.
Yeah, and the chivalrous codes, exactly. So I think that's what we want to attenuate to, that we would be willing, especially if we see ourselves as eternal, we would be willing to stand up for something that, I mean, maybe even if we had to die, that's what these our dragon and our
Yeah.
cat beings do take that on. So, which sounds dramatic, but nevertheless, it is the regard for the sanctity and the principle. And I think we need to return to
You're
that deeper
absolutely right.
understanding. And you know what? But then you start working in the divine ecosystem. Like you said, then there's mercy or there's grace or God, Mike Michael is protecting you. So you stand up, but you don't have to die for it. And just like you said, it happens in all of our life. I mean, it can
Yeah.
happen at work, it can happen in your family, just
It
in
never
terms
stops.
of
Never.
standing up for principles, but in what way? It doesn't have to be combative, because actually that's part of what the dragon healing was.
Right.
The dragon healing is not using your warrior, your opponent, like you have to kill him, but the catalyst of of the challenge makes you rise higher. Like, how can I work with this catalyst to make myself better, to keep growing my own light? As you grow more and more of your light, dark things literally can't be in you, or literally shrivel in you in front of you.
It's all frequencies. Everything we're talking about, we call them great felines and dragons, and we call them entities and emotions. But really, we're just looking at different types of frequency that can be measured. So we know it's just a case of adjusting the radio dial either into that frequency of hopefully joy and love and happiness and all of those things, or hopefully dialing out of fear and anxiety. But also, one last thought, but Leslie, has just come to me, and this relates to both the divine mercy and the cat, which and sovereignty and free will, is that if we truly believe in sovereignty and free will, we have to respect it in other beings, whether we like them or their opinions or their agendas or not, because they're also exercising their sovereignty and free will, which is also another form of divine mercy and divine will. So I share that if we really want to be the honorable cats, we have to respect everybody's right to free will, even if it does mean they do terrible things within duality. But maybe that's also just part of the design in the first place. So this is where wisdom comes into play, and we take a step back and say, you know what? Maybe it's just not for me to worry about or to do anything because I'm just being myself, right?
Yeah, well, let's see. All right, thank you so
Inshallah.
much. Thanks to everybody for attending and listening
Alrighty.
wherever you are.
Thank you, Leslie, as always. Thank you to the great felines. Thank you to the knowledge and wisdom of the 13. Thank you to all of you for turning up. And you know what? If you're having experiences, whatever they are, we always love to hear from you. Please do put them in the comments. If you've got this far wild, you're going to get free golden bananas or maybe free golden cats if we can find them in the
Yeah,
emoticons. And
the
hit like and
cats.
subscribe. And of course, if you are interested in what Leslie's been sharing, you can contact her for readings. You can get your Antares code. You can get the books. And of course, there is the Stellar Nations pathway on the QPW channel. So that's it for now. Thank you again, Leslie. Thank you, everybody in Lakesh. And we'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye for now.
Okay, thank you. Bye bye.